Hi all! Everything in my video is pulled from the public domain, and I am using them under the Fair Use, Fair Dealings guidelines. Everything I say is my own opinion. You should look into this information for yourselves, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody had a great day off. I know I did. All right, that's Tigger and Toodles above, napping on my son's bed. He's a big Steelers fan, as you can probably tell from the blanket. All right. Now, I don't think there's anybody that's subscribed to my channel that isn't aware of Mr. Christopher Bouzy, who is the head of Bot Sentinel. He actually has multiple companies, but Bot Sentinel is the only company I'm really interested in. And people have been wondering what the heck is going on. How are you involved with him? What is happening? So I just decided that I was going to do a video to explain what the heck is happening. Okay? Yeah, it's a little bit eye-opening. So jump right in and let's go. So you guys know that there's a lot of YouTubers. They range anywhere from 47,000 subscribers all the way up to 132,000 subscribers. I actually, out of all of the ones that you're seeing now, have the smallest amount. I don't even have, at the time that I'm doing this video, 34,000 subscribers, and I'm in the United States. So I am what my husband likes to call the low-hanging fruit. Or so some people would like to think, that I'm going to be an easy target, but I'm not. So let's just lay out what happened so that everybody will understand from my point of view, okay? Let's just get started. In October of last year, Mr. Bouzy came out on the scene with his Bot Sentinel, and I decided to do a little digging into him, and I did a video on YouTube called It's So Bouzy. It wasn't that big of a video. It only got 22,000 views. Over 3 months, it only got 22,000 views. But Mr. Bouzy was made aware of it and immediately went on the defensive. So it was at this time that he started to tweet, and he's tweeting, and he's tweeting. And his tweets, as time went on, became more and more abusive, and in my opinion, somewhat of a little bit paranoid. You know, who do you think you are? You're 56. How dare you run a channel? And then he called me a hate channel. He didn't even know about me until I did the video on him. And you should also know that when I started my channel, I did do a lot of primarily things about Harry and Meghan. However, as my channel has evolved, I now include information about other members of the royal family. Lately, I've been including information about the war in Ukraine and how people can help. So my channel has evolved. Anyway, I digress. And then he doxed me, and the threats continued. She doesn't know what I do for a living. I'm going to get her. Now, I should also let you guys know, it wasn't that long ago that he was on some sort of a podcast with somebody named Pagan Trellaway. I hope I'm saying that correctly. And on that podcast, if you listen, he says, I don't dox people. But he did. When these tweets came out, I ignored them, which is why he then began to release more and more information. I mean, as you can see above, he released where I live, what I do for a living, what my husband does for a living. And this was supposed to be intimidation. It doesn't work for me. I ignored him. Mr. Bouzy also said in that same podcast I just mentioned that he doesn't release info on people. Yes, see tweet above. I should also point out that in that same podcast, Mr. Bouzy told the young lady that he was speaking to at the end that if she knew names of people, she should release them. Yep. Not long after that, Mr. Bouzy contacted YouTube and said that I had put up his private information and he wanted my video removed. YouTube went to my video, saw the bankruptcy paperwork, saw that it was available in the public realm, and that I had blurred out everything but his name, the case numbers, all the information, and they decided to let my video stand. Now, I want to make sure that you guys all understand what was in my video. First of all, I quoted him directly from the Elle magazine interview that he gave. He had no complaints about that as far as I know, and he never complained that Elle magazine misquoted him. I discussed the fact that he had filed for bankruptcy. He didn't complete the bankruptcy as far as I can tell, but he did file for bankruptcy, and that information is available all in the public domain. I pointed out that he was talking about single-minded hate accounts and the hateful tweets that they were putting up about Meghan and Harry, but I was able to pull tweets directly from his open, unprotected Twitter account that showed that he himself was running somewhat of a hate account. His hate account was aimed at the royal family, specifically William and Kate. What Mr. Bouzy was upset about was that I mentioned his daughter. She was in my video for about 8 to 9 seconds. And let me make something perfectly clear. I did not mention her name, where she lives, her age, what she does for a living. I mentioned nothing about her other than the fact that she accuses Mr. Bouzy of not being a good father to her. Other YouTubers have done videos on the daughter. I'm not going to say I agree with what they did. It's not my job to police other people. I did start to watch a couple of those videos and then I stopped because it made me very uncomfortable. But I'm just saying, I never said anything about what she does for a living. Listen, if she's working, making money, and she's happy with her life, more power to her. But here's the interesting thing. That's what upset Mr. Bouzy. And if Mr. Bouzy was that upset, he could have sent me a message on Twitter. He could have emailed me. My information was there. And he could have simply said, "Excuse me, I don't like this information, and I would appreciate it if you take it down." If he had done that, I probably would have. But instead, he went on a Twitter jag with all kinds of threats. So with that being said, he's putting up tweets like this one. "I'm not bringing children and spouses and family members into this mess." Let me remind you, the previous tweet, he did bring my husband up and he said what he did for a living. And even though he said, "I don't bring children into it," he then put up the next post you're going to see where he made sure everybody knew that my son has autism and he tried to put a positive spin on it. And I will say he is right. He is a fabulous kid. This fabulous kid had to fight physically and every other way known to man, all the way through school to get the things that are handed to the other kids. He is now in college. He makes the dean's list and the president's list almost every semester because he's ridiculously smart, and he's now driving, and he's a fabulous driver. I could not be prouder. And there is a big difference between saying that somebody accuses their father of being a bad father and releasing the private medical diagnosis and information of a special needs person. They don't even begin to compare. He put up this tweet with most of my Instagram account information. And just as an FYI, the reason I had an Instagram account with this title on it was because my son, the autistic one, finally said, "I want a social media account." And I, as a responsible parent, was going to be watching him. And he didn't want me on there. And so I made an account that said, "I'm watching you." And that's how I got onto his Instagram so that I can monitor what he was doing. And somehow Mr. Bouzy tried to make it sound nefarious. Yeah. And just as another FYI, this account has been in existence since my son was 12 or 13. He's going to be 22. And Mr. Bouzy tried to make it seem like I put that there because of Meghan Markle. It has nothing to do with Meghan Markle. Now, it doesn't take a genius to see what Mr. Bouzy is doing. He puts up these tweets and he tries to upset the Sussex squad because he actually wants them to do his dirty work. That way he thinks that he's in the clear. Perfect example again, when Mr. Bouzy told the young lady that was on the podcast with him that if she knew the identities of these people, she should release them. He already said he wasn't going to, but he encouraged her to do it. There you go. Now, Mr. Bouzy, and FYI, I've never called him anything but that because my mother raised me to show respect, is so busy focused on other people and civil cases that he's not paying attention to possible criminal ones. Let me explain. While the state that I live in does not have any kind of laws against cyberbullying, New Jersey, where Mr. Bouzy resides, does. They have some of the strictest laws in the United States. You can end up in jail. You can end up with a lot of fines. And if you're found guilty of cyberbullying, you could also be found guilty of stalking. The law is very clear and even talks about Twitter. So even if you're not in direct contact with that person, you could still be found guilty of cyberbullying. So for instance, the fact that most of the tweets that I showed you were posted after I had blocked Mr. Bouzy and he had blocked me, but yet he continued to tweet about me and he continued to try to find things to write about me, that's stalking. Here's a perfect example. I went on Twitter and asked if there were any other alternative social media sites to Twitter. And Mr. Bouzy, who had been blocked from my account, screenshot what I wrote and then posted it and then puts, a bad spin on it. And FYI, I'm still on Twitter, everybody. I just was looking at the alternative sites. So after Mr. Bouzy whipped up the Sussex squad and they started writing nasty things, like this one that said drag her, I take that as a personal physical threat. Now, again, referring back to the podcast he just did a few days ago, he said that no one on their side has harassed anybody and that he does not feel that he incites people to violence. Right. Go get him. The name calling. She's an old woman. She's a middle-aged white woman. Tweets like this, they're about to go through some things. I'm going to be here for it. These are the kind of tweets that whip people up and that can cause somebody to be physically injured. And he thinks because he's not the one that's going to be injuring somebody, somehow that doesn't make him liable. Putting up tweets like what you see above at the very top. I added so she knows that I know who she is. Trying to get people to call the nursing board to report my license. But as you can see, you have to be doing something illegal. A DUI, a misdemeanor, something. And I haven't done anything, so there's really nothing to report me for. Pulling stories from NBC, ABC, CBS, CNN, BBC, and giving my opinion on them is not doing something illegal. Sorry, but that's my opinion, which is protected by the Constitution. And of course, you have the tweets that he puts out that may not be directed directly at me, but that show his frame of mind and how dangerous he could be, to people's personal safety. I mean, look what happened to the Duchess of Sussex, I think is how you say her name. People took pictures of her underage grandchildren and emailed them to her. That's a threat. Now, the police have been notified. The FBI has been notified. They're investigating. The people that are sticking their noses out like this don't realize that they could be arrested, fired from their jobs. I mean, they're not thinking. Maybe you're one of those people that uses a VPN so you think you can never be found. Please believe me, the FBI and all of them, they have ways of finding you. You have to go from an account somewhere on a social media site. You can be tracked. Could you imagine these people showing up to your job or you being arrested because you've threatened somebody's children and then you're fired, then you can't pay your bills? I'm like, come on, people, think a little bit. So after I was doxxed on Twitter, and I was doxxed, not only did he put out my full name, but he linked my YouTube accounts to it. So I've been fully doxxed. He found out that I was considering talking to the police about what was going on because I feel like he's inciting people to do things. That's what he's doing. So Mr. Bouzy, who's already contacted the police in the UK and has reported Yankee Wally and has put her under investigation for I can't even imagine what, called me a Karen when he found out that I was thinking to reach out to the North Bergen County Police Department about his behavior. So did I get a cease and desist? Yes, I did. And what am I doing with it? Absolutely nothing. I'm ignoring it, just like I've ignored everything else. Now, since his claims of defamation are false because everything that was in that video was true, from the bankruptcy to the tweets that came directly from his account to what he said, quoted straight out of Elle magazine, to what his daughter said about him, there is no case. Now, interestingly enough, this tweet was sent to me by somebody that said that Sue Me, I think her name is, published her cease and desist letter, and she thinks it's a game. But the other person who received the letter resolved the issue amicably and behaved like an adult. Well, unless he sent letters to more than 2 people, I'm the other person. And this tweet confuses me because I have not done anything. I have not removed my tweets, and I have not removed or altered my videos, so I'm not exactly sure what he's talking about. Now, here's the really strange part of this entire scenario. Mr. Bouzy has still yet to reach out to me. Now, this is someone who's supposed to be a professional businessman, and yet he's incapable of writing a DM or an email to express himself. Instead, it's threat, legal. Threat, legal. Dude, I raised an autistic son and battled with schools and parents for years. This kind of stuff to me just doesn't intimidate me. If there's an issue, you can still reach out to me with an email. No, I'm not being smart. Write an email. My email address is on my YouTube account and readily available. Now, please make no mistake. If anybody from the Sussex squad makes threats, if anything happens, if any more tweets come to light and are sent to me, those will simply be forwarded to the correct authorities in New Jersey, and we'll move forward with a legal case for cyberbullying, not a civil case, a criminal case. And we all know how the Sussex squad likes to dig into people's backgrounds. You guys go right ahead and dig. I've never been arrested, never been in trouble with the law. I'm still married to the first and only husband I've ever had after 20 some odd years. I've raised 2 fabulous children who are law-abiding and who have never been arrested or been in trouble. They don't drink, they don't use drugs, nothing. But, dig away, go for it. And I'm going to take this time to let you all know that the last 2 years working in the ER out of my 27-year career have been really hard. It's been like working in a war zone. The patients just keep coming, and every time I walk in and I see the 50 people in the 20-person waiting room sitting around, it's like a war zone, which I know is not a good thing to say right now with what's going on in Ukraine. But I finally just looked at my husband and said, I just don't think I can do this anymore. And so I'm sorry to say I put in my notice, and I'm retiring from the emergency department. I keep thinking back to that tweet that Mr. Bouzy put up that said I had gone from helping people to hurting people. Defamatory. I haven't hurt anybody. I'd like to think in 20 some odd years of helping people, little kids to the elderly, holding their hands as they leave this earth, and, doing the best I could for my patients, that there's some karma coming my way. That's what I believe. I've put it out, and it's going to come back to me in a good way. So with all of that said, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to bring this video to a close. I am one of the smallest channels out there. I'm hoping that changes. I'm hoping people want to subscribe. They want to listen to what I have to say. Do I think I'll ever be as big as Meg or Taz or them? Probably not. But you never know what could happen. So thank you all for listening. As usual, I would love to read your comments. Please, classy, not trashy. We're going to go for class, not crass. Okay? Leave those comments. Don't forget you can follow me on Twitter. You can email me. My email is in the description box. And for those who have been donating to my coffee fund, I thank you kindly. For those who have requested new toys for Finn, he has received them. And as always, everybody, have a fabulous day.